Hair is a topic that's brought up many times in the Torah. We find many discussions about growing a beard, about the peyot, covering one's hair after they get married. A nazir, which is in our parsha, which says Kol Yemei Neder Nizrei Tar Lo Yavor Al Rosho. You should not go and cut your hair at all. That's the beauty kebiyochol of the nazir. Hayagadol, he should be goydel sa'ar rosho. He should be making it long his hair. The idea of covering hair is also learned in the parsha of Sota, which is also in our parsha and parsha Nos over here, about the fact that they exposed her hair because that was a busha for a woman to expose her hair who always covered her hair. Of course, we know there's an idea of a chalaka. So I just wanted to explain a couple ideas behind the idea of hair. Now listen to a very interesting Gemara in Baba Batra and Daf Kuf Nun Daled, that there was a child that went in Bnei Brak. He was in Bnei Brak, so you can already understand the story. That he went ahead and he sold the nechasim of his father. He sold some type of piece of property of his father. And then soon afterwards, Rahman al-San, he died. The kid passed away. And there was a whole discussion if the sale is a good sale. And what's it depend on? Was he a child or not? We have to check the simanim. We have to know if he had two hairs, then he was a adult. If not, then the sale is not a good sale because a child cannot make a kinyan. It's not kayam. So they went to Rabbi Akiva and they asked Rabbi Akiva, can we go ahead and, believe it or not, listen to this, open up the kever. They wanted to open up his grave and check if he was an adult or not an adult. They wanted to check. So first of all, Rabbi Akiva says, bug off. It's a bizayin for the met, and you're of course not allowed to do that. But the second answer is what we want to focus on, and that is that he said, in any way, simani masuyim lishtanot la'achar mitah, meaning even if someone does not have hair per se when he dies, it could be after death he actually grows hair. An incredible phenomenon. Can you imagine that one? Tosad there actually explains in that way. He says it could be that he doesn't have simanim before, and afterwards he has simanim, doesn't have gumot, doesn't have holes, pores, and then it opens up afterwards. As the Bach over there explains, the Bach on the Gemara, he says, in the kever you can actually have gray hair that will grow. So he says, so Mamela, it could be that it grew after Mita. Now, if you go ahead and check up on this, some will say that, first of all, there is an idea that, yes, there could be a little bit of activity left in the body, which can make hairs grow, even after death. But the more Mikubal understanding is because there's a decomposition of the body, and since the skin is withering away, so automatically more hairs become exposed. And that was the ta'ana of Rabbi Akiva, that it could be it wasn't there now, but it's going to happen afterwards. But al kol panim, we see a phenomenon, we see a concept that hair can grow even after Mita, it can grow kebiyochel. And I want to know why. What's the idea, so to speak, behind it based on the Bach or the Gemara and Rabbi Akiva? Where does it come from? So listen to Rabbeinu Bechaya in our Parsha. In Parsha Nasoi, Perek Vav, Pasuk Gimel. He says that the reason why your Nazir is warned not to cut his hair, because the sa'arot of a person is the yesod of hair. The sa'arot of a person is kocho, that's his strength. Just like by Shimshon, his whole entire strength lied in his sar, as we all know, that evil woman Dalila, when she ended up removing his hair, he was sar mimenu koichi, as he spoke out over there in Shavtim. And he gives off the reason why, because sar be'etzem has no end. It's in the front, the back, around, and the top, and it has kilu. It's a type of nitzchi, endless type of connection, which come because there's a tremendous amount of pores and a tremendous amount of hairs on a person's head, and it comes even, and it grows. He says even after death. This is the words of Rabbeinu Bechaya, and they grow even after death, as long as he's standing in some type of wet place. And he says the idea behind it is because the hairs are a connection, they're kind of roots to the higher worlds. They're roots to the neshama elyonim. You have a neshama, and it's connected up to the higher world, so to speak, in some way. And that comes through the power of the roots, which comes through the hairs, and that's why there's so many of them, because there's so many types of nerve endings which are connecting up to the higher worlds, and therefore they are tremendously powerful. In the words of the Kabbalistic writings of the Arizal, they're known as the tzinorot. Tzinorot are funnels of canals that kind of bring down shefa, bring down some type of power, Elyonid, some type of influence from the higher worlds, and it comes through the power of the hair, which are on all different types of connections to the higher worlds. That's why Shimshon, this was his Achilles heel. By losing his hair, of course he was a Nazir, but by losing his hair, he ended up losing all his kochot, because his kochot were l'mala mina teva, as we know the psukim, right? It was above the teva. Obviously, we know Shimshon had kochot which were above nature, and it came because of his roots that were connected through his hair. Ki nezer elakav al rosho. The Nazir, his power comes in the power of his hair, the Nazir. And by removing that, he ended up removing his Koach Elyoni. An incredible idea, which is brought based on that. Just like we have sparks from a candle, you have candles which have sparks that kind of shoot out. So we have sparks of our neshama which come out through the hair, and that's the chuta shalhevet, he calls it, the connection, the funnel, the wire that connects us up to the higher worlds. Now, having understand that, it would be well understood that we know that every part of your body, so to speak, if you kind of prick it, cut it, or cause issue, it can really be extremely painful. Nobody wants someone taking scissors on their nose or any other part of their skin. There's only one place that people are okay with it, and that is your hair. Of course, your tzipornaim, your nails also, that's similar but a little bit different, and I don't want to get into nails right now, but basically your hair is a place which has, of course we know, no nerve endings, and that's a place where you have to kind of snip it periodically, and there's absolutely no pain there. And the reason why is because it is a place that is kulei ruchani. It is not psari. It is not physical. It's the tzinorot. In as much as it's above your body, it's the place that connects your neshama to the higher world. So therefore, it is not a place of pain, of physical pain. It doesn't have the physical pain that is there. A spiritual pain it could be. That's why the Arizal says very emphatically, and it's brought in the Ber Heitev and Kupei Aleph, that one should not snip his beard. He holds that your beard should be grown long, it should be extended. We know Tzuras HaYehudi, the Chazon Ish says, is to have a beard, because that is the place of connections to the higher worlds. But that's the importance of the Nezer Elukav al Rashov, a Nazir. That was Shimshon's power. That's the idea of the hair, which seems to connect to higher worlds, and therefore they actually don't have any pain when they are snipped. Zeh le'umat zeh bara Elokim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought for every right side a left side, for every left side a right side. There's always an opposite addendum. And therefore, in as much as the hair is a place of power, it is also a place of danger. It is also a place of fall. It's a place of catastrophe also. And the classic example of that is, of course, the Gemara in Sota brings on Daf Yud of it brings over there 5 people that their greatness were similar, that they had something fantastic about them, and that brought their downfall because it was used incorrectly. One of those people was Avshalom. Avshalom was the son of David HaMelech, who was a very charismatic and beautiful person, as the Pasuk says, that Avshalom lo haya ish yafeh mikol Yisrael, and one of his what made him so fair was his hair. That wasn't a rhyme on purpose. Anyways, that's where it came from. And from the fact that he had it, he could have used it for great things, such as Shimshon, but he used it to get to his gaifa, and he wanted to knock his father's head off in order to become the king. He was a very charismatic character. Charismatic people become presidents of the United States, such as the Obama, who did absolutely nothing, and people still seem to think he had some talent, just because he had some type of mouth that was able to fake them out. So this charismatic personality of his tried to make him become king, and he had a following behind him. So his greatness was his fall, and he ended up getting killed by his own hair on purpose, obviously, where he got dangled from a tree by his hair when he was riding, and then he was killed by David's men. Al Kol Panim, that's the idea of Zelu Umat Bara Elokim. And if that's true, we can come well to understanding the idea behind the covering of a woman's hair. Some people take this personally. They think it's not feminine, it's not very nice to do that, to make us all covered up. But the idea is on the contrary, because the hair is such an incredible koach and such an incredible power by a woman who is on a higher level, so to speak. Ima is from Lashon Em, from Amuna, and in every language, the word for a mother always has the source of the word Emuna. If it's mame, mother, mom, Ima, Em, it always has to do with the idea of emunah, because a woman who is on that higher level, being connected to the higher worlds, and therefore the sparks that comes through the hair, that's the power of where it comes from, and therefore we cover her hair in order to avoid that that point of kedusha should be utilized correctly. It should be held intact and in place. Rav Moshe David Vali, who was a Talmid of the Ramchal, writes in Shir Hashirim, Mi ba'ad l'tzamtecha, he says the reason why a woman has to cover her hair, shelo yitabku be'en chitzonim, in order that the klipot, the negative side, should not connect to her, v'lo yinku min hasarot shalem, and they shouldn't get connected from their hair, and shouldn't come and make an achiza, a connection to the wrong place that shouldn't get there. So over there, he's going to speak out, which I'm sure many people are asking, so what's the difference if she's married or not married? And the idea is there's a difference between whether she's married or not, because there's a certain level of a woman who's on a higher level, and he gets into the details al-pi Kabbalah, which is not really our forum over here, why it's not, but usually, simply speaking, a woman is still waiting to get married, so we leave her hair uncovered, but he says more deep things than that. Al kol panim, we see from here the reasoning behind the covering of a woman's hair, and that's why you should know this could be an eitzah, a reason why women are makel with shaitels, because some people are not happy with the payah, with the shaitel. They say you're defeating the purpose, and yes, al peep shot maybe. Having fancy shaitel is definitely out. It's ousted because you're causing more damage than you are helping. But if you see the real reason for covering is to avoid the chitzonim that comes from the hair itself, so sometimes as long as it's covered, you're avoiding the problem. Now listen to a marsha, with this we're coming almost to a close, that says in Nida on Daf Nun Bet, he says an incredible thing. He actually writes over there that why is it observation? Why is it that the hair on your head or your beard grow constantly, as opposed to the hair on your body that doesn't grow and it grows and it stops? It always comes to first time. How many times are you shaving your body? You don't have to shave be'etzim unless you keep cutting it short, but it usually comes to a standstill by the body hair, as opposed to the hair on the head keeps growing. And he continues on the theme that we were mentioning before. This is the Maharsha from the 1500s, the great Maharsha. Nid Daf Nun Bet, and he says the reason is because the neshama lies in the head. Of course, the neshama is the radar that connects us to the upstairs, and it's in the head, and it has an extension cord that goes up to the higher worlds, and that extension cord comes through the tzinorot shefa that comes through the hair. The hair is the tzinor, that's the place of connection to the higher worlds, and therefore there is constant free choice that is happening by us. We're always making decisions for the good or for the bad. We always have some type of ideas, whether it's for the good or for the bad. We always have some type of hargasha. You have a certain feeling of ruchaniyut, hitarabut, an awakening that makes you excited or not excited. You get a certain type of feeling within you, and we are constantly dynamic through our head, which is the point of the neshama, and therefore your hair is constantly moving, as opposed to the body, which is a standstill, because the nakud of the neshama is dynamic, and therefore the hair is always growing on a consistent basis. Wow, incredible. And that's the idea behind the nazir. Of course, that's why in the nazir, as the Rabbeinu B'chai writes, doesn't drink wine because it affects your head. And he says you shouldn't shave your hair because it affects your head. It comes from the same source, that a person has to make sure to keep himself in the right place, because a nazir can use his hair for gaiva, or he can use it to humble himself. He's there for a humbling process. As the Gemara brings of a certain nazir Shabadarim, the Gemara Nadarim brings that he was so beautiful, he was very charismatic, and he made himself into a nazir because he didn't want his Yetzer Hara to jump on him. So this humbling comes only through the hair. The hair is the power of Kedusha, but it's also the power of Tumah. And a person has to be careful how he utilizes his hair and where the right place. Yosef at Tzaddik was Mesalsel Berosha. He was playing around with his hair, and Chazal give it to him over the head. You're being Mesalsel Berosha, you're playing with your hair, so we're going to be Megara Alechet Adov. We're going to make the wife of Potiphar take advantage and cause you a lot of problems, because a person has to know that it can be used for the right or for the bad, for the good. Incredible. We see incredible yesodot that lie behind the power of the hair. Ad kedei kach that we find, believe it or not, there is a minhag amongst Hasidim, and there are many stories amongst them, to actually be gonez. They would put the hairs that come out of their beard into their sfarim in order to keep a geniza, because they didn't want to throw them away. I don't recommend to do that in front of your wife, because I don't think it's so pleasant for people. But anyways, there's even a Maisa with a Divrei Chaim, that someone had his Sfarim of his Zohar, where he had a few of his hairs from his beard were nignas inside of the Sfarim, and it said when he passed away, the hairs disappeared. It went with him to the kever. They disappeared and they weren't there. The Ben Ish Chai in his Torah Lishma is adamant against this. In Siman Tuf Mem Zayin, he's against this minhag. He says it's not true, you shouldn't do it. But basically, the Likutei Ma'arich brings a pshara. He says, if it's done by someone who was makpid, and only by someone who was a makpid, like the Arizal, which is brought in the Ber Heitav and Kuf Pei Aleph, that never touches his beard because it's Sinot Shefa, he realizes it's Kedusha. Someone like the Divrei Chaim, the Tanzarav, no problem. So then it can be done. By someone who's just a mabikach like us, who don't really do that. We do shave, and we especially try to keep ourselves clean shaven, al masudar, and tidy and kempt, and we don't necessarily makpid for their result. This does not apply. Al kapanim, through this idea of sota, which talks about the exposure of hair and covering our head, and also the idea of nazar, which talks about the growth of hair, we felt it was very important to realize this certain idea, to realize we are attached, we are connected. Baruch Hashem, our hair is there to connect us. For those of us who still have a few pieces left of our hair, we're there to stay connected, and therefore always remember this idea of the Tzelem Elokim that we have. Shabbat Shalom.